So I'm going to talk about streaming services, and mostly we're going to talk about xCloud. But before we do, I thought it was worth stacking it up against Stadia because Stadia is launching next week, right?
Yeah, apparently,
As far as we know.
for some people.
So we talked last week just about how underwhelming we felt like everything was. We haven't heard anything about it. We hadn't seen the launch lineup announced, and we got that launch lineup announced this week. So first off, how did you feel about the list of games you'll be able to play on Stadia at launch?
Hold on. It's not a it's by no means a lengthy list. So I'm gonna pull this shit up and
It's 12 games, isn't it?
Yeah, and read it to you because I'm just gonna say this at the top. All right, the reaction to that video was asinine. Okay,
Yeah, our
ahead.
discussion drew a lot of these guys are just trying to get clicks. Google's gonna do something awesome. So
Oh my gosh, guys. All right. For the record, the argument we were making was we would love to see this succeed, but Google has a track record of not allowing these things the time, space, and resources in order that's needed to succeed. That was the thesis of the whole topic.
And we expressed hesitance last week about the launch lineup.
I
None of us were
Google
super jazzed about
everything. I'm not Google by any means.
Which is Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Destiny 2 The Collection, Guilt, which I think is an Amazon developed, a Google developed game, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Just Dance 2020, Kine, which these
also Google developed.
Mortal Kombat 11, Red Dead Redemption 2, Rise of the Tomb Raider, Shadow of the Tomb Raider Definitive Edition, Tomb Raider Definitive Edition, Samurai Showdown, and Thumper. Those are the 12 games you'll be able to play when your $140 Founders Pack comes in, or however much it costs.
And a number of those are free or have been free through Games with Gold before. So
there's also a list of games they released that'll be out before the end of 2019. I'm not sure if you want to read those.
Yeah, we can do that real quick because I don't think it makes it any better.
No.
Attack on Titan 2 Final Battle, Borderlands 3, Darksiders Genesis. Is that a new Darksiders game?
No, it is, but it's not I don't think it's a proper like third person action Darksiders. It's a different, I think it's like asymmetric.
Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2, Farming Simulator 19, so that you can get trained up to compete in the Google Stadia sponsored esports league. Final Fantasy 15, Football Manager 2020, Ghost Recon Breakpoint, highly acclaimed, Grid, Metro Exodus, NBA 2K20, Rage 2, Trials Rising, and Wolfenstein Youngblood. So those are all the games you'll be able to play by the end of 2019. Totally fucking underwhelming. Completely underwhelming.
And on top of that, they announced that all the features that they've announced will not be available at launch. So Stream Connect, State Share, and Crowd Play, those are not going to be available at launch. They expect Stream Connect to launch by the end of the year, but then State Share and Crowd Play will be released next year. The Stadia achievement system won't even be active. The game will remember your milestones so that one day when achievements launch, you can get those achievements.
I can see the headlines already. Google activates achievements, servers crash as everybody's achievements ping.
You can't actually use any Chromecast Ultra to play games at launch. Hopefully, eventually you will. Family sharing will not be available at launch. Buddy passes will not be available at launch. The Stadia controller is going to be limited in who it's going out to. So
let me step back and explain the Chromecast thing. So the Chromecast is going to require a certain version of firmware to use Stadia, and they are not going to be pushing that live to be able to download on any Chromecast. It will only be what's packaged into the Founders Pack. Yeah. And then like Buddy Pass, which I guess the thought is like, well, they won't have a Chromecast that'll be able to play it, so why give Buddy Pass? But like that was part of the package that you sold. Like that was, hey, get the Founders Pack, you get the controller, the Chromecast, and then however many, I think it was just one extra Buddy Pass. Like it's a part of the package that was sold that people aren't going to be able to get day one. I don't know.
Last time I saw a company do something like that, we talked about Fallout 76 for several weeks in a row.
Yeah. I don't know. It has not instilled any additional confidence in me. And in fact, I feel more confident now to say, I think Google is already starting to feel shaky on this.
Well, Luke, you're not the only one who feels that way. Ars Technica released an article today titled "Stadia Launch Dev: Game Makers Are Worried Google is Just Going to Cancel It," and that's written by Kyle Orland. And I'm just gonna read the one quote from the article. Gwen Frey, developer of Stadia launch puzzle game Kine, told GamesIndustry.biz, "Quote: The biggest complaint most developers have with Stadia is the fear that Google is just going to cancel it." End quote. And she continues to say, quote, "Nobody ever says, oh, it's not going to work or streaming isn't the future. Everyone accepts that streaming is pretty much inevitable. The biggest concern with Stadia is that it might not exist," end quote. And so there you have a developer on a Google game agreeing with the points we made last week, which, like, yeah, game streaming is going to take off. It's happening. And we just aren't super confident that Google's going to stick with it because, again, they've got a track record of not sticking with these kinds of projects.
And look, I am totally willing to eat crow when I am wrong about a speculation. I am the guy who said, this Overwatch beta was cool. I'm just not sure if it's going to stick around for the long haul. I have now put over 1,500 hours into Overwatch, all right? I'm willing to eat crow, and I want to be wrong about Stadia. The streaming space is going to be so much better with Google in it because it's going to create competition that will keep Xbox pressing on the gas like they currently are, and we're about to talk about that. It's going to cause Sony to assess where they are streaming wise. It's already made them make shifts with PlayStation Now. Like, the streaming space is a better space with Google in it, and it's not about me wanting Google to fail at all, but it is about me being able to see all this shit and say, I don't think they're setting up the foundation for themselves to really be successful within this.
Yeah. Cody, Luke and I have really just ranted back and forth. Do you want to weigh in?
No, I mean, I agree with what you guys say. I think it's a bad sign if one of your developers, one of your exclusive games is expressing hesitance that the platform their exclusive game will be on won't exist in a few years. I think we all agree that Google being in this space pushes everybody else to be better because we know what Google can do. Unfortunately, Google does not always do that. And so I think when we're talking about this stuff, I don't think any of us want to see, or really, it's not about want. We're assessing whether or not these massive corporations will be able to do what they say or invest in the way that they're seeming to invest in something like this. I don't give a shit if a corporation succeeds or fails. No, I don't think any of us do. I think it's more about assessing objectively whether or not something like this can succeed in an industry and in a space that is inevitably moving in this direction already. It's essentially what this woman is, what the developer is saying. We all know streaming is the future. Who's going to be the first one to knock that door down? Is it going to be Google? And I think last week we said shakily, probably not. This week, I think we've probably doubled down on our sentiments that it's probably not going to be Google.
Yeah, this week Google kind of crouched down like, maybe not. And then Xbox just delivered a flying Superman punch.
Yeah.
And I do want to say, Cody, you pointed out to me before the show that they did walk that statement back and say that it's taken out of context. But you also rightly pointed out that I can't imagine the context in which that statement means anything other than what it says.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll move on from Google Stadia. We don't really feel like that is the future of streaming. I just don't have a lot of confidence there. But after XO, I came away super confident in the future of xCloud. Just all kinds of excited. So first off, xCloud is going to be paired with Game Pass in a meaningful way, which is going to mean that you've just got access to this huge playlist that you can just stream at the drop of a hat. In the interview, what was the guy, the head guy of xCloud?
I do not remember his name.
I'm blanking on his name, but I will say my favorite quote of the whole show was him saying, "We literally put an Xbox into the cloud." So he climbed a giant ladder with an Xbox and just jammed it straight into the cloud. So here we go. But in all seriousness, it's the excitement that I have for Game Pass paired with the excitement of the future of xCloud. Like Xbox is about to roll out the capacity to really just have a streaming service where you don't buy any hardware. They're really about to be the Netflix of gaming. What device do you want to play this on? Fire it up. So I was going to go through all the things they announced real quick. First off, they announced over 50 games that are going to be able to run on xCloud. And they aren't like dinky games. Like you got a bunch of Borderlands games. You've got Ark. You've got Halo 5, Devil May Cry 5. They announced. Sorry, I'm mixing up. I almost said something that was not accurate. No, I didn't. Yes, it is. Madden NFL 20. Like that's going to be on there. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you can go read we don't have time to read the list of all 50 games, but it's going to be a good library.
Sure,
right
we do. Here's
gates.
the top.
Yeah. Did anything else stand out to you guys about the xCloud announcement before we just really just jump in? Oh, the controllers, the support for other controllers. So they're going to support. What was the
DualShock 4s?
That was the big one, Sony's DualShock 4, and then there was another one that was pretty popular. But either way, that was really
Google
exciting.
Stadia controller.
Now let me clarify something. We are not talking about these are 50 games that are going to be included in the future with Project xCloud.
Yeah,
these are 50 games that are now available on Project xCloud, the preview of Project xCloud. And so they also announced that Xbox Game Pass is going to come to xCloud. So all of the games on Game Pass, if you're subscribed to Game Pass, you'll be able to play via xCloud. And so that's massive. And they also announced that xCloud is going to be supported on Windows 10 PCs in 2020, which is another massive thing. So effectively, it's going to run on every single device that Stadia will run on, except I don't think that there's anything it can run on as far as like, Fire Stick, Roku, Chromecast, things like that. But that's got to be in the plans.
Yeah.
But you have a set-top box.
Yeah. I mean, well, essentially you're starting off with a roster of 100 games, these 50 plus the 50 or so that are on Game Pass, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the strongest thing that you need, other than like obviously the infrastructure to support it. But for any streaming service, games or otherwise, the library is what people are going to be talking about day one.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
We just saw that with Disney. Whether I could give two shits about the majority of the Disney catalog that is on Disney Plus, but it's hard to refute the fact that they start out with a very extensive, strong backlog of content that you have day one. And that's going to sustain you for a long time as obviously Xbox has shown, as you kind of continually add more content to it. So I think that like the amount of games and the kinds of games and the specific games they have on here is impressive. And like you said, Larry, it just sort of like is a big fuck you to Stadia, which is starting with measly 12 games. And some of those are, I would say, pretty lackluster.
Yeah. And I genuinely don't think it was like Xbox's intention to kick Stadia when it was down.
No,
they had this announcement planned way in advance. It was just a terrible week for Google to make the announcements that they made.
Is there a good week to announce that lineup and other than let's say 2017?
Yeah, no.
It would have blown my mind to see it Assassin's Creed Odyssey in 2017.
See, I nailed it. It's about the only time it would have worked.
Yeah.
The controller that I'm forgetting the name of, the interesting thing about the other controller that xCloud will support is the layout of it essentially turns your phone into like a Switch style where you've got stuff on each side. And so that's really appealing to me. Like, I actually don't like the the mount that is typically displayed of an Xbox controller with the phone stacked on top of it, just that I feel like I'd get really shaky. But so just some variety in the ways that you can play, so much variety in the games that you can play. It's going to be on PC, it's going to be everywhere. Streaming is the future, and out of the gates, like, Microsoft is going to be the company that is doing it super well.
Yeah, and I think they're doing it in such a way that, like, people understand it. And
Yeah.
like that makes, we talked last week about how Stadia, I think, has struggled because it's not a hardware release, and so it's hard for people to wrap their minds around it. Xbox doesn't have that issue because they already have hardware, and that hardware isn't essential for xCloud to work. But they're not trying to message this as if we would think like, okay, Stadia is entering the gaming scene. Where's their box? Like, Xbox doesn't have that. They're already an established name in the industry. So I think that's been a big part of it. And then also just the lineup and the support of the games. I think it speaks volumes that EA has decided that they're going to put their streaming partnership with xCloud over Stadia. And I think EA is a much bigger partner for these platforms than Ubisoft is with Stadia. Would you agree? Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. Especially when you consider EA's annual releases.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of seeing Madden on there, like that's kind of a huge deal for me, I think. Like, I'm not big into sports games, but instead of me never mind, I'm about to speak incorrectly. But putting that on this streaming service instead of the typical go buy the game or buy the game and download it, I don't know. That's a pretty big deal. If I can't afford an Xbox, I can still fire that game up on my phone. That's going to be cool.
I also just think that Microsoft has been way more upfront and realistic with its expectations of what xCloud and streaming in general are, like the trajectory. I think Spencer said earlier this year, he was straight up about the fact that streaming is years away from being a mainstream form of gaming, but they're laying the foundation and the track for that to be the case. He's upfront about the fact that lag is a realistic thing, and pretty much anyone telling you that lag is not a thing when it comes to streaming is lying to you.
Mm-hmm.
I just think
what if a company's trying to tell me that there's negative lag?
Then they're actually negative lying. Is actually telling the truth.
Oh, thanks, Stadia.
Yeah. I just think Microsoft has learned a messaging lesson about this stuff from their mistakes in the past, and they're obviously showing it and paying it forward here. And so I'm appreciative of the fact that they're realistic about the direction of this new technology, and that goes a long way for me in terms of understanding how committed to this they are. The fact that they do understand it's not an instant investment, instant reward kind of thing. This is laying foundations for the future. That's promising to me.
And I think some of that too comes from, in a lot of ways, this is the direction they've been going for a while.
Yeah.
And I don't want to imply that at the beginning of the console generation, one day we'll be streaming games. That's not what I'm saying. But even back then, they had this vision of the always connected gamer. And it was a vision that a lot of us rejected and didn't think was possible. And now we're to the point where, like, the idea that our Xbox has to connect to the internet at least once a day, like, doesn't even cross our minds as something that would be difficult for the most part. I recognize there are people that live in locations where that is still a struggle, but they saw the direction things were going then, and I think this is just a natural offshoot of that always connected gaming society that they had in mind back then.
Yeah, I think another thing Xbox has done effectively within this is, and something that differentiates from Stadia, is they see this as a gaming supplement. Like, this is something to do additionally on top of your console gaming. This is not, while yes, you can just play these games on your phone and you don't have to own a box. That's possible. That's not the messaging they're pushing. This is hey, you can take the game you've been playing on your console, put it on your phone, and play it on the go. And I think that's much different. Like, Stadia, the only option you have to play those games is streaming it, and there are all kinds of things that can hamper that experience. And we're used to one kind of experience, especially when playing in front of our televisions or at our computers. And Stadia, I don't think, is going to be able to emulate that perfectly. And without that option of being able to throw my save to a real piece of physical hardware where I can just run it straight from that, is not as appealing as, oh, I'm playing through this Halo campaign on my Xbox. I'm on the go and just want to play a mission or something. And I'm not tethering the whole experience to streaming. It's just a portion of it. And I think that's the way that we have to ease into this.
Mm-hmm.
As people get used to it and see if they have what it takes to actually do it. Like, I think there's also a ton of people with Stadia who are like, the specs are out there of what the minimums are and like what they recommend having. But at the end of the day, like, am I going to tie my horse to this thing where I'm not even 100% positive I'm going to be able to enjoy it at its optimal, in its optimal way?
Yeah. And in a lot of ways, this is an easy entry point for Google. You know, like, you're not making that big hardware investment. But again, that gets back to the reasons that we question whether they'll stick it out. This whole thing just feels like them sticking their toes in the water, and I do hope they make it. If they stay, I hope they provide some competition, because it is always good to have competition. That we don't have the Xbox that we have today without Xbox really coming out of the gates this console generation in a lackluster way and learning some hard lessons. So competition always sharpens, but as it stands, man, if I'm choosing to throw my money at xCloud or throw my money at Stadia, like, xCloud, hands down, it's not even a contest right now.
Gosh, and I also just remembered that I have an Android phone now, so I'm going to try to get in on the preview for xCloud. I'll report back how it performs.